Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we will be talking about the Engineer class from Block Fortress War. The Engineer is a defense-oriented class that excels in the back line where they can buff and heal your turrets. They can also place aggressive, self-powered turrets for supporting your troops during a push. The Engineer's main weapon is a slow-firing, long-range machine gun akin to the 50 cal turret. The main difference of the two is that the Engineer's weapon has an underbarrel rocket launcher that fires every so often for a burst of splash damage. Now let's talk about the Engineer's first and most useful ability. Unlocked at level 1, the Engineer's first ability is a buffing aura like General's Inspire or Alpha's Nanobots, but unlike those abilities, this one gives off a buff to nearby turrets and does nothing to the surrounding units or the Engineer himself. Keep in mind that even without the ability active, the Engineer gives off a passive buff to each turret around them, even though the enhancement is slightly decreased and only gives it to the turrets in much tighter radius. Now let's talk about the Engineer's second ability. The Engineer's second ability is unlocked at level 3, and when used, lets you place down a self-powered turret anywhere within a 4-block square. The turret itself is a weaker version of the machine gun block. The only difference is that this turret has shorter range and does slightly less damage. Use this ability when you want to put turrets in a high area that isn't within a resource block's range, or when you need to be fighting in close quarters as the turrets will still be shooting even when the Engineer is melee fighting. Another tip for playing Engineer against other players is that the gun's shooting noise is completely silent. You can use this to your advantage by placing it out of sight of the enemy and let it pick away at their health since it can't see or hear the turret. Remember that the portable turret can be buffed by the Engineer's first ability, meaning that it can gain some serious range and durability if you put it up somewhere high. You can use the turret to protect yourself from units while capturing a resource node, as the units will shoot at the turret instead of aiming for you. Now let's talk about the Engineer's third and final ability. Being Engineer's third and final ability, it is unlocked at level 5. The ability, when used, lets you blow up any area in a large radius with an electromagnetic pulse, disabling any turrets caught in a blast. This ability is very helpful for pushing, as it lets your units push up without getting shot down by long-range turrets. Some miscellaneous tips that might come in useful are that early game, you should go up somewhere very high and not aim for the enemy heroes. Your early game splash damage is extremely helpful for taking out enemy units in mass, and the height can increase your long-range gun to even longer ranges. Sitting near resource blocks is a very useful strategy, as resource blocks can heal the Engineer while the Engineer is doing the damage, and the Engineer can heal the resource block. And as an added note, if you put the Engineer on top of the resource block, the enemies will attack the block and not the Engineer.